And when people hear the word injustice, all these emotions come in, right? Sex trafficking is a gross injustice, right? Racism is a gross injustice, and we should be against these things, right?
For sure.
Hunger and disease are grave injustices. Genocide is a gross injustice. People not having clean water is an injustice,
absolutely.
right? All of these things are terrible injustices, but I believe the injustice under all the other injustice in the world is that people are without the gospel.
It's another episode of the Missional Marketplace podcast, accelerating the Great Commission through the marketplace. I am your co-host, Mr. Darren Cooper, here with the one and only Eric Cooper. How we doing this morning?
We're doing well. We're back for another week. The powers that be continue to allow this to happen. It's a miracle.
They have not fired us yet.
Yep,
they have not fired us yet.
We have not been shut down by the authorities at this point.
No, not at all. And at the time of this recording, the 2022 Indianapolis 500 has just been run, and you are Eric with a K, which is the Swedish spelling, right?
Yeah.
And Mr. Eriksson just won the Indianapolis 500. The only problem is he spells it with a C at the end.
I know, and he's Swedish too.
I know.
It's really odd.
I almost called him, but I was just like, you know what?
He was a little busy drinking milk and kissing bricks and all that.
Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah. But no. So if you ever wonder why it's with a K, now you know.
That's right. We are good Swedes here.
Absolutely,
yes,
absolutely. Well, hey, welcome back to another episode. Like we said, we're rocking and rolling. If you've taken this journey with us, like we say pretty much each and every week, we are following Missional Marketplace, the book that you have penned, and kind of given that outline and walking us through. And so we've gone with work in the great story, work in the great commandment.
That's right.
And now here in the next few episodes, we're going work in the Great Commission.
It's true.
Work in the Great Commission. And I know that this is something that's extremely passionate, not only for you, but for us here at the Stone Table, for CRF, our housing organization. It has been kind of the DNA, the foundation of everything we've done from the get-go. So I'm just going to kind of tee up here and say, hey, talk to us a little bit about where this comes from and how it's been put together, not only in your life, but ours here at the Stone Table as well.
Yeah, and the book, Darren, really drives towards the Great Commission. As you said, we broke it into the great story, the meta-narrative of Scripture, work in the great story, work in the great commandment. How does the gospel embody itself within the context of our daily lives and our daily work lives? But now we're going to talk about work and the Great Commission, and this really is our driving force as an organization. It's why we've existed for the last 30 years. And really, when it comes to our contribution to the faith and work dialogue, this is really kind of our special sauce, I guess, so to speak, right?
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, sometimes I call it marketplace and missions instead of faith and work. We are really a missions organization that was rooted in the marketplace. We are a missions organization. The faith and work and marketplace conversation really is just the seat we sit in. And so we wanted to contribute to that conversation from our seat on the bus.
Yeah. Well, and I love that too, because that obviously it's kind of our, you said secret sauce, our niche, whatever you want to say there, but we can have the faith and work dialogue and what that looks like and inspire others to join in, but it really does come down to that Great Commission.
That's right.
And how we can step into it. And so I guess to kick us off here, because when you say the word missions, I think it's easy to have maybe a couple of different thoughts. Like if you're listening today, when we say missions, you might think of something, and whatever that looks like, right, not right or wrong, but just what does that mean to you, or I guess explaining what the Great Commission is, and then what does that missions piece look like for us as an organization?
Yeah, and let's kind of go back to the beginning here, because I think this is really good foundational stuff, Darren. And really what we want to talk about today is the Great Commission and this concept of missions. And then over the course of the next few weeks, we're going to work that back into the marketplace conversation. Yeah. But, if we say, what is the Great Commission, that's a question that we really need to answer, because there was a Barna study that was done in 2018 that said 50% of church-going Christians could not identify the Great Commission. Now, in fairness, the Great Commission is not specifically mentioned in Scripture. It's what we've called it, or what the church has begun to call it over the last 2,000 years. But this idea of the Great Commission, half of church-going Christians could not identify what it is. So I think that's what we want to do today. What is the Great Commission? And it really goes back to Matthew 28:19. Actually, it's the verses around 28:19, 16 through 20 or 18 through 20. I'm going to read 18 through 20 today. But it says, "Then Jesus came to them and said, 'All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age.'" This is the last recorded words of Jesus to his disciples before he ascends into heaven. So like the last word's usually a pretty important word, right?
That's a pretty big thing.
Yeah, he said, go, like get out there, get moving, or some translations say as you're going, but motion, like let's go.
Yeah.
It's an overt, it's a call to action. Make disciples, which is proclaim the kingdom, train up followers, baptize followers, right? Go and make disciples. And then this is the key, Darren, of all nations. Now, the translators have used the word nations, and we understand why they've used that word, but it's really, when we think of nations, right, we think of the United States of America, we think of, Canada and Mexico, and we think of nations as nation states.
Yes.
The way geopolitically we would define nations. But really the word here, the word Jesus used here is in the Greek ethnos. It's ethnos. And really, if we define that properly, the words we would use is people groups. So not nation states.
Interesting.
But people groups of people joined by similar customs, language, culture, right? That's the word Jesus used there. And he said, go to all of them.
All of them. Wow.
So this is the crux of Jesus' last words. Go, move, call to action, make disciples, proclaim the kingdom, train up followers of all ethnos or people groups. Yeah. And this is really at the crux of who we are as an organization, but it really is the crux of who we are as the people of God.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and that's why when I said, when you say missions, it can mean different things, right? It'd be a mission of a business to have clean water, or I think of Tom's shoes or things like that, right? Really good things. But when we say missions, what does that foundation stand in? And that's really what it is right there, is the Great Commission. And so that's why I wanted to make sure that you broke that down and that we knew that that's where we're coming from. And really, like you said, that is to all of us. Yeah. It's not just to us as at the stone table. It really is to all of us.
Yeah, so let's take this down even another level then, Darren. I mean, let's talk about making disciples amongst these people groups, right? Mm-hmm. But when Jesus said all ethnos, he said all nations, all people groups, we need to wrestle with some specificity there.
Okay.
Because there are, depending on how you count them, there are approximately 7,000 people groups in the world today. We say UPGs, unreached people groups. There are 7,000 people groups or UPGs in the world today
7,000
that do not have access to the gospel. That 7,000 people groups would break out to approximately 3.2 billion with a B people, or 42% of the global population.
Wow.
So 42%.
42%.
Yeah, 42% of the global population is what we would consider unreached with the gospel. It is possible for you to live in these places of the world, to be born, to live and die, sometimes with ever as much as meeting a Christian. So, if Jesus, we like to say, if Jesus showed up in the middle of the night and revealed himself to you in a dream, you would wake up the next morning and you would literally have no one to go talk to about this. There are no Christian people. There are no churches. There are no established ministries. These are the people we call inconveniently lost. 3.2 billion, 7,000 UPGs, 3.2 billion people, or roughly 42% of the global population, are unreached with the gospel.
Yeah.
And so we get passionate about that here, Darren, because I believe, and this I don't think it's not meant to be a controversial statement, but it may be a controversial statement. We believe here that this is the greatest injustice in the world.
Yeah.
And when people hear the word injustice, all these emotions come in, right? Sex trafficking is a gross injustice, right? Racism is a gross injustice, and we should be against these things, right?
For sure.
Hunger and disease are grave injustices. Genocide is a gross injustice. People not having clean water is an injustice, right? All of these things are terrible injustices, but I believe the injustice under all the other injustice in the world is that people are without the gospel.
Yeah.
And if 42% of the global population is without the gospel, we need to do something. We as the people of God need to be about that calling. This isn't about selling a new religion to people like, slimy door-to-door salesman, right? This is about proclaiming the lordship of King Jesus and the new life and resurrection power of his kingdom.
Yeah.
That is what we are about as an organization.
Yeah, and for 100%. And to even think about what you said there about, you alluded to somebody having a dream and waking up and they have nobody that they can go talk to about that. Those are real stories that we've heard, right? But it isn't necessarily about like you said there, it's not this door-to-door salesman. It really is getting to a place where those folks that are having those moments, these dreams, these visions, these things where they're having that real connection with God, that they have a place to go where they can be discipled. They can, whether it's a church or a place that you can have those deep conversations. Because I think it would be easy to go, oh, well, you're saying that, God isn't in those places, until we get there, God isn't there. Well, no, he's working and moving, but it's in those moments that those dreams happen, those visions happen, that there's no place to go. So what do you do there? How do we battle against that?
As we've talked in other aspects, right? Like for some reason, God chose to partner with us, right? His image bearers, right?
Absolutely.
He chose to partner with us and to bring his kingdom, to fulfill his kingdom, and to proclaim his kingdom to the ends of the earth. Yeah. And, I don't know why. I don't feel like I'm a trustworthy person he should have picked. But for some reason, he's chosen to work through us, right?
Yeah.
And so we have an obligation to obedience to the words of Jesus. I don't understand all of the sovereignty of God discussions that are out there right now. All I know is Jesus said, go and make disciples of all nations, and we have to be about that. Yeah. So, and Darren, sometimes people say to us, aren't there unreached people in our own communities too?
Yeah. It's a valid question.
And I would say the answer to that is no. and it's really a matter of terminology. Okay.
Sure,
there are unchurched people. There are unsaved people. Yeah. There are people who are far from God in our own communities, but there are not what we would call unreached people groups in our own communities. There are, let's face it, in the United States of America, no matter where you live, even in the most liberal, secular of communities, there are churches literally on every corner, right? You have access to if you live in the United States of America, you have access to the gospel. So when we talk about this idea of unreached, I really want that to grab people's heart, that there are 42% of the global population has no shot at the gospel if we don't go, right? Yeah. And that should move us deeply. It should move us deeply. Yeah. And we see it, Darren, in our giving as well. I think this is really important to talk about. A vast majority of church giving goes towards home-based ministry, and that's understandable, right? That's understandable. And you see stats all over the board here. But of the portion of church giving or church dollars that goes to cross-cultural missions work, almost all of it goes to what we would call already reached areas and people groups. And you can look this up. The Joshua Project has great statistics on this. Radical has great statistics on this. But a majority goes to already reached people groups. Wow. And the stats would tell us, Darren, somewhere between 1% and 3% of the funds that go to missions. This isn't even all of the giving to churches, but of the funds that go to missions, only 1% to 3% actually goes towards these unreached places in the world. And this is what keeps me up at night. This is what keeps your big brother up at night. Because we will answer to God for what we have done with his Great Commission one day. Yeah. And everything we do with encouraging marketplace believers here is ultimately pointed in this direction. What are you doing to see the name of Jesus proclaimed amongst every nation, tribe, and tongue?
Yeah. Wow. And I like I said at the beginning, I know this is not only a passion for you, but a passion for the organization, the Stone Table as a whole. And I hope that in that passion for what we're talking about here, that you hear that you go, oh man, what can I do to get involved? What can I do to help in this regard? And I know, Eric, that a lot of times stories move people, right? They're the beautiful things that allow us. I mean, we all watch Netflix and movies. It's all based in story, right? And so tell us a story. Tell us a story about maybe some unreached people groups or something that you've seen happen in this amazing and radical way that kind of highlights the necessary need for what we're talking about today.
Yeah, one of the stories that always resonates deeply with me. This was, early on in the days. It was right about the time we started the Stone Table. I think probably 2014. Stone Table launched in 2015 officially, but I was in rural, and to say rural, when you think of rural Indiana, you think of farm fields and stuff. I was in rural Tanzania,
right? Which is a completely different thing than rural Indiana.
I like to say National Geographic Tanzania, and the folks knew I was a little skittish. I mean, you and I aren't campers. Our parents did not raise us in the outdoors.
No. What does Dad always say? His idea of camping is an RV with a black and white TV.
With a black and white TV.
That's how we were raised.
That's how we were raised. Properly, I would say. We were raised properly. But, I found myself in rural Tanzania with some missionary friends and my brother-in-law, David Wigington, who loves to push me a little bit further than I'm comfortable going as well. Sure. But we drove out in this Range Rover to the edge of civilization, and then we went 4 more hours. Okay, so we went 4 hours on dried out riverbeds out into the wilderness. I mean, we were in the wilderness. We were going to see the Datoge tribe and the Hatzabe. We were going to see National Geographic Africa, and actually spend the night there. The stories are crazy. I tell people it was the most meaningful night of my life that I never want to have again.
Please don't make me do it again.
Please don't make me do that again. Yeah. I'd rather tell the stories. I mean, we ran into Black Mamba Snake, which is a whole story in and of itself.
I'm out.
Yeah. But we were out with the Hatzabe. They were teaching us how to shoot bows and arrows, which was a trip because these little kids can shoot these bow and arrows, and I couldn't even pull the bow back.
Right.
And so this was an amazing 24-hour period. But on our drive, we were on these dried out riverbeds, out in the middle of nowhere, Tanzania. And we crest this hill, and there's a woman walking along the side of the road, and she's carrying a little baby kind of in this wrap around her neck. And so it was time for us to make a stop anyway. So we kind of pull over I was going to say to the side of the road, but there was no road. We just kind of pulled over.
To the side of the bed?
Yeah. And we get out, and we're with a Datoge tribesman who was there with us. He was driving with us. And he gets out, and he and the missionary begin to speak to this woman. She's walking along the side of the pathway here. And it's obvious from just viewing her, the baby is not feeling well. It had, like snotty nose. It was all crusty around its nose and mouth. And the woman informed us that she was taking the baby to the next, village over.
Right.
To see the witch doctor because the baby was very ill, and she wanted the witch doctor to perform some, some ceremonies
Yeah.
and maybe give some herbs or something to the baby to make the baby get better. And so the tribesmen that we were with and the missionary asked if we could pray for the woman, and we prayed for her. And then they said, we would like to. This was how it came through the translator.
Mm-hmm.
We would like to introduce you to Jesus. And I kid you not, the woman's eyes lit up. They lit up, and she said, I would love to meet this Jesus. I will be back at my tent later this afternoon, and I will make some tea, and you can bring him by, and I would love to meet him, right? And we kind of chuckled in the moment, but that moment is drilled into my spirit, Darren, because this woman literally had never heard the name of Jesus before. She had no context for who Jesus was, for what Jesus had done for her and for her baby and for her family. She had no context. She had no access. She had never heard the good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ and what he does for sinners.
Wow. And that even goes back to what you were saying about, local people in the U.S., right? That if you say, I'd like to introduce you to Jesus, to your neighbor, they have a general idea.
Yeah.
Even if they didn't grow up in church, they have a general idea of what you're talking about. But in this moment, this lady had no recollection and literally thought it was an actual person that you were going to bring over.
Right.
Like that's, wow, that idea, I think it does. Like we said, story is powerful. And that story right there just highlights and just puts a spotlight on why we're so passionate about that here at the Stone Table.
Yeah, and there are 3.2 billion people on planet Earth just like that woman, in different forms or fashions, different cultures, different people groups, different, different realities. But the world needs the good news of Jesus. And like we said, for some reason, he's chosen to partner with us.
Right.
And it's our responsibility.
Yeah. Wow. And that's a strong call too, and all of that. And so I guess what kind of question pops up in my mind, or what begs the question, I think, at this point is, we are a marketplace podcast, right? We're talking to marketplace people that are out there doing their jobs each and every day. The last few weeks, we've been talking about just how important their work is and why it's important and all that stuff. So when you start to switch this conversation into the mission side of things and unreached people groups, and all of a sudden it's like, whoa, what does my day job have to do with that, Eric? Where in the world? This is a left turn I didn't see coming, right? So talk to us about why and how those things overlap.
Yeah. Well, what does the Great Commission have to do with marketplace believers, with this faith and work conversation? And what does it have to do with it? I would say everything. Only everything.
The simple answer.
Yeah. and the way it has embedded in my heart and my spirit is that if you belong to Jesus, then the Great Commission belongs to you. So this isn't about missionaries.
Right.
This isn't about pastors and professional ministry people. There is no Great Commission B team, right? This is the calling for all followers and disciples. When Jesus was talking to his disciples before he ascended to heaven, and he gave them this commission, he was talking to those people, but he was also talking down the generational line to you and me. We are disciples of Jesus, and we are being sent out. So I would say, if you belong to Jesus, the Great Commission belongs to you. And that means if you're a marketplace believer, if you are trying to figure out how to engage the gospel through your everyday life, to embed your work story and God's great story, to live out the great commandment through your everyday work, I would say don't stop there. Don't stop there. We are called to embody the gospel and proclaim the gospel. We are called to the Great Commission. If you belong to Jesus, the Great Commission belongs to you. So this has everything to do with the faith and work conversation. And next week we're gonna talk about how the marketplace is actually being used in these unreached places around the world, and we're gonna tie together some of these marketplace conversations with the Great Commission more directly. But I felt like today we had to go back to the roots and really dig up some soil and plant some Great Commission seeds in them all over again.
Yeah, and I think that's a great place to start. You know, when we start to have this conversation, it has to be that foundational conversation. And I think not only your passion, but the passion of Stone Table as a whole comes through in this conversation today. And I'm excited as we transition out of the end of this episode. I know that the last few weeks we've been doing these missional moments, and they've been so special to hear these conversations. And over the next couple of weeks, we have some pretty special, I guess is the word to use, pretty special ones with some friends of the Stone Table and friends of yours that just have some beautiful stories and beautiful challenges for us, beautiful stories to tell. And so in this missional moment, who are we talking to, and kind of set that and frame that up a little bit for us?
We're talking to Greg Mundis, the Executive Director of Assemblies of God World Missions. And Greg has become a dear friend. He's a dear friend to many. But back at the genesis of the Stone Table, we actually went out and met with him, and he really was key in helping shape some of our missiology, some of our business's mission, passion. And I wanted everyone to hear a little bit from my conversation with Greg Mundis, because I think it's going to encourage you in this regard.
Yeah. Well, enjoy this week's missional moment.
When we were first launching the Stone Table, my leadership encouraged me to drive to Springfield, Missouri, and meet with the Executive Director of Assemblies of God World Missions, Greg Mundis. When we spent a few hours with Greg, we asked him, what is happening in world missions today, and how are we as an organization uniquely equipped to meet that need? And it was at that meeting that Greg unfolded the strategy of business as mission and why it is so vital to our missiology today.
You know, there was a time in the 20th century when going into countries as a missionary was more or less acceptable. Maybe not desired, but, you know, more or less acceptable. With governmental change, independence, sovereignty issues, pulling away from Western influence and so on, et cetera, that times have radically changed since those days. And I think we as a generation, Eric, have experienced that change. And I think we can't stick our head in the mud or stick our head in the ground and say, no, this is who we are, this is how we do it. No, you have to have your eyes on the horizon and say, what's happening and what is God saying to us?
When we think about the skill sets necessary for a missionary on the global field, we think of the traditional things. We think of preaching, we think of theology, or maybe higher ed and education, compassion type skill sets and ministries. And all of those are still vital to missions work today. But there are other skill sets that are beginning to emerge, marketplace skill sets that are vital to the future of global missiology.
Having people that have a heart to share the gospel, to be able and have skill sets, you know, beautiful different skill sets. I just heard of a missionary that is going to open a skating rink.
Yep.
In Eastern
I know
Europe.
that.
Yep. That's so awesome. And they're there and they'll be able to share their testimony. And someday they'll be able to establish a community of faith, a church, in whatever form that's going to be. Yeah. Others that have like skills in like sports, yep, or in coffee making, or in business consulting, or in travel, legitimate businesses. Yep. And legitimate reason why these governments want in the country, because they provide work for their local people.
They add value.
And it's a beautiful combination because there is a mission. It's not just to make a successful business, but to share the gospel.
I often quote a Barna study that was deeply troubling to me, that highlighted the emerging generation's disillusionment with the concept of global missions. I shared that study with Greg, and he had a completely different take on how to interpret it.
I am encouraged by this. Eric, that Chi Alpha, which is a student ministry on secular campuses across the United States from Assemblies of God, are doing a fabulous job. And every several years, we have a joint venture of Assemblies of God World Missions and Chi Alpha and what we call World Mission Summit.
Yep.
And we have seen literally thousands of young people give a year and pray about a lifetime in overseas missions. That encourages me.
Yeah.
There are other organizations that have these kind of events, and they're still happening. So there may be a whole lot of surveys out there, but it's kind of like sometimes you kind of feel like Elijah, and saying, "I'm the only one. I'm the only one." God says, "Hey, lift up your head out of the mud, and there are 7,000 out there that have not bowed their knee to Baal." And so I'm just going to choose to say, let's keep on preaching. Let's win. Let's be advocates for world missions, for U.S. for missions. And let's see the gospel get into every tribe and every nation so that we can all celebrate around the throne of God as Revelations 5 and 7.
The more I talked to Greg, the more encouraged I got that this global missions, this Great Commission mandate that our organization and our business here has given its entire existence to, and that Greg and so many of our missionary friends have given their lives for, it will go forward and it will make an impact in this world.
The gospel will go forth. And it takes men and women like our missionary body and like these national church believers that we partner with to share the gospel. And people's lives are still being changed. People are coming into the kingdom still because of that flexibility segued with the Spirit of God. God, this door is closed. That's what Paul experienced. Hey, you can't go into Asia Minor, but you can go to Europe. So what are you going to do? Okay, Spirit, we go. And that's what's happening.
So maybe you're out there and you're feeling stirred, but you're saying, I'm just a bookkeeper, or I just wait tables. I don't have any great missions skill sets. I think Greg has a different perspective for you.
First of all, I want to dispel any imagination or presumption that missionaries are special people. Missionaries are ordinary people that in obedience have heard the voice of God, and in obedience responded. Doesn't mean they're superhuman, doesn't mean they're super spiritual, doesn't mean they're great businessmen. It just means they've responded in obedience.
A huge thanks to my dear friend Greg Mundis, and really the thousands of missionaries on the field with organizations like Assemblies of God World Missions. If God is stirring you, if He is doing something in your heart, if you feel that pull and tug of the Holy Spirit, and you're thinking, "Gosh, could God use me if I just raise my hand and say, yes, I'll go, I'll follow, I'll obey," you can go to agwm.org, and about halfway down that page, there's a button that says Become a Missionary. And I know our friends at AGWM would be thrilled to help you connect and see what God might be stirring in your life. The gospel will go forth to every nation, tribe, and tongue, and all of us carry a mandate and calling to be a part of that Great Commission.
Man, I love that conversation with Greg. Just somebody that's passionate about it, somebody that's encouraging. You just can't help but watch that and go, yes, let's go. Let's go. So I love all that he brought to that missional
Greg's
moment.
a special guy. He's a special guy who's lived this out for a long time.
Yeah,
So,
for sure. Rich history with him. So, well, I know today, Eric, we kind of pivoted a little bit. We were saying that we were having this faith and work conversation. Now all of a sudden we're talking missions, and we hope that some people can connect the dots between the two.
Yep.
But maybe today somebody's feeling inspired. Maybe it was by the missional moment or something that you shared, and they just want to know some more information information, like just what it's about, like where can they go other than the stonetable.org?
That's right.
Other than there, where else could they go
Nice pitch.
to? Yeah, right. That was a nice. I like it. Where else could they go to find out more about what we were talking about?
Well,
today?
there are some incredible missions organizations out there. A lot of them doing some incredible work.
for sure.
Our friends today we talked to with Assemblies of God World Missions, which is where kind of our roots
Mm-hmm.
come out of.
Yeah.
And AGWM, Assemblies of God World Missions, is doing just incredible work around the world. They've been doing that for over a century now.
Wow.
Rich history. Huge heart for the unreached areas in the world as well. And so you can always go to agwm.org and you can trust those folks there. They're doing some incredible work. And then obviously stay connected. As you've already said, Darren, we got a resource page at the Stone Table. Pass this podcast along. Guys, you could do us a huge favor just by continuing to subscribe and share. I mean, we've built this podcast, this season of the podcast, to really live on, long past the 12 weeks that we're releasing it. So this is something we really want. Subscribe, share, pass this along to people who are interested in talking about missions and the marketplace. So thestonetable.org, our resource page. And then, of course, you could always pick up Missional Marketplace, the book. You can pick that up, links from our website, but it's at Amazon. And we've got the audio book as well, which a lot of people seem to enjoy. For some reason, love to hear 5 hours of me reading to them versus, a couple hundred pages of actually reading it yourself.
Right. You can also get it at ericcooper.me. That's Eric with a K because we are Swedish.
We are Swedish. That's correct.
Right. That is
good
right.
Scandinavians, aren't we?
I love it. I love it. So go check out those resources. Make sure you're a part of that.
Subscribe, rate, share.
All that
please.
good stuff.
It's huge help for us.
All that good stuff. And so thanks for joining us again on another episode of the Missional Marketplace podcast. We hope that it was an encouragement to you. And until then, we'll see you next week.